GMGM, welcome to another Touchgrass podcast episode. Today we have Abbas from the Umbra team. I think based on the conversation we had off camera, I think there's a lot here, and I'll let Abbas introduce him in a minute. But essence of this episode, I wanted to talk about ownership coins. I wanted to talk about token versus equity, everything that you've been seeing on the timeline. And I've just been seeing Abbas trenching with like different people, giving his views. So just wanted to get him on to talk more about that. Abbas, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Awesome.
Well,
Let's start. Tell us everything. Tell us where your interest in all this started.
yeah, I can give quick context. I would say like let's start with MetaDAO itself because I can go back from that. I spent, I'd say, from Feb or March this year, I mean last year, 2025, to about August, so 6, 7, 8 months approximately, actively working with MetaDAO. I first read Profit's article somewhere around the year before that, maybe in December or Jan. I think that's when he posted it last year about wanting to do a platform that does fundraising better. I knew of MetaDAO for a while now through another friend of mine, and I had understood Futaki is pretty good. It's like an interesting mechanism to solve governance and all of those problems, but I never really found a, a point of connection. Like, there's no way I could contribute to this meaningfully because I'm not a governance guy. And when I saw the platform fundraising launchpad thing, it suddenly clicked to me because that's where I most find myself fit. I spent 3 years before that actively working in Super Team, in various other launchpad like chain ecosystems, with the venture fund and a few other places, onboarding founders, onboarding devs, helping them get started, build, go to market, work on their product, find teams, raise, all of that stuff. So capital would be that one piece where I can plug it in and just like have this full suite of products I can service to a founder and help them get started. And when I read this, I was like, okay, this is permissionless capital. It's even better. And then I read the problems that I've faced with token because I'm a trader and investor as well. So I spend a lot of time actively participating in markets, and I hate what the markets are, right? You do not have a good project to back because you actually own nothing. So when I read through the article, it made sense that I wanted to be a part of this. Ping Profit said, "Hey, I do X, Y, Z for you. Would you like me to help you?" He said, "Yes, let's do it." And that's how I started working on it. So that's a rough background of me.
Yeah. Like just for like how we got here, why there is so much of this. I feel like people get a little emotional when it comes to these ownership coins, and because they've seen so many things fail in the past. They've seen hundreds of launch pads, hundreds of fundraising platforms, and when they see something that's more democratized and that's more everyone has a level playing field, everyone kind of relates to it. But kind of walk me through how we got here. Like, why were people so fed up of fundraising platforms that were there before, and what is the new
Yeah.
model that people should know about?
I have a very like unconventional way to look at this, and most people don't look at it this way. I have at least not heard anyone speak of it. That is, this is of course a problem that's started around the ICO, the previous ICO eras, right? So we had a bunch of people sell tokens to get around regulations. We call them DAOs, and we would not associate them to like equity because you can be called a security, and it's a whole other problem. So I don't hate the teams that did it, but it caused a break in market structure where you now have two tokens or two essentially tokens, right? Equities are tokens, but they're off chain, or two instruments accruing value or supposedly accruing value, or the founders try their best to accrue value to them. And in that way, you're destroying more value than you're creating because that's not how things work. When you have two financial instruments attached to one, value does split, especially if you do not assign a clear value to it. So, for example, if you don't state X value goes to token, X value goes to equity, the market's confused and does not know how to price this. And especially when one's illiquid and others liquid. And then add fraud to it, right? Add all sorts of tokenomic gymnastics people do to pump prices, etc. So there's a lot of like outright crime as well as just trying to be safer on the legal and regulatory front by teams that cause this. But there's another part of launch pads that I hate, or I hated for the longest time, for the last 1 year or two, I'd say. We took some remnants from NFT era, and we had this royalty structure, right? We had taxes on tokens that we would think were the best way to sustainably build or bootstrap a team, provide them fundraising. And I'm an NFT guy. I started with NFTs. I don't call myself that anymore, but I used to be a part of NFT culture. Um, and I hated the idea of the team raising a primary round, that is doing a mint sale, let's say 10,000 NFTs, then going on and adding a tax on royalties, collecting fees, and then constantly proclaiming announcements and announcements and announcements to pump their tokens or their NFTs and then collect those fees, and there's no promise delivered. So every founder is now incentivized to keep bullcrapping on Twitter to pump those fees up and create a sustainable revenue source for themselves to keep going for a longer period of time. That followed through, and platforms like Believe and others that were recent additions to the Launchpad space tried to copy that. And of course, those founders are not native crypto founders, so they do not have too much
Yeah.
context and they miss that mark. So those are flaws in the system that we hopefully get rid of with MetaDAO.
Yeah, I think one thing I would add before passing it to Rachit is the reason people are so fed up of all these models, and in this year a lot of M&A has happened. We have seen so many of, I mean, project launches a token, community forms, people are, I mean, even if they're down a lot, they still believe in the project. But I think it kind of, we saw the nail in the coffin over the past couple of months where these projects are being sold off and they're being acquired. And we have seen this with the Tensor team, we've seen this with Axelar, and the token holders got screwed, right? And that's when everyone is like, we just can't do it. We just can't hold these tokens anymore. That's why we need, and that's why even though they are not like complete believers in some of the projects, they just like the tokenomics model and how they are being launched. Even right now, even if some of these ICOs that we'll talk about, they don't have, the best or some kind of new project or product. They have this new ICO model where it's launching at very low FTV, everyone can get in and everyone will get decent allocation. I think that's what's attracting people, and this whole equity and token value accrual, that kind of was the nail in the coffin. And I think Axelar and Tensor are the recent examples, but there are many other cases as well.
Yeah, that's one more thing I wanted to add. I've been thinking about this when I read Profit's article. That is, I needed more tokens to go to zero. There's plenty of liquidity trapped in tokens. And the only way a token goes to zero or an equity goes to zero is you shut down or you just get acquired. That was non-existent in crypto because founders would stretch their runway as much as possible, leech off the treasury as long as possible because there's no fiduciary duty technically to the token holders, or has not been for the longest time. And then you just like die at some point by bleeding it all out, right?
Which
So
is
there's no
really interesting because I don't know if you guys get this, but I have notifications on for FTT still from back in the day. And I always get astounded when it pumps like 20-30% a day. I'm like,
yeah.
what's even going on there? But about take me back to that moment when you read Profit's article for the first time. What, like, define what an ownership coin is, and like how is it actually different from equity? We talked about tokens being scared of being equities. What is an ownership coin?
Yes. So the way MetaDAO structure works is it is trying to hand off. Okay, first of all, it's trying to protect investors. I think that's very important to understand. It's trying to protect investors from having this dual equity plus token structure. That was a big problem, right? People would not know what you own. Tokens were mostly looked at as customer badges or like, fan badges. When you buy a token of a project like, I don't want to take names, but pick anyone. You're essentially a fan or you're a holder. That's all you get, nothing else. You have no rights over the project, the IP, the revenues, the claims for anything at all. MetaDAO said, hey, you know what we'll do is we'll let you as a founder come raise capital on our launchpad. Let's say you want $1 million. The thing you have to do as a founder is sign off all IP rights to this DAO, sign off all claims to this DAO, all revenue, all product details, everything to this new entity that's going to raise capital. And you have claims for, let's say, a monthly spend to go and build out this product that you want to build, this vision that you want to execute on for whatever period of time. And the community gets to participate on this ICO round. Now, the structure is the community is able to use Futaki or decision markets. Essentially, you go and trade and you use your capital to vote yes or no, in effect, and express your opinion on a proposal. So the proposal could be, hey, I like what you're doing as a company. I want you to go expand into Asian markets. I think that's a good proposal for a founder to put forward. The community goes yes, no, whatever they think is going to help token price, and the founder is incentivized because the founder only has token allocations. The founder has no separate equity, no labs entity, none of that stuff. So the founder now has a perfect gauge to understand that as a board, like the way the markets work, even in traditional public markets, you'll have a board tell you approximately what the value of equity would be like, or if it's beneficial for your company or not to explore X direction or Y direction. And this is what the market does in this case. So you now have the market control and guide you, but also the token holders can get protection because there's this treasury value sitting tied to this DAO. So let's say the product starts earning revenue, the treasury that they originally had from fundraising plus the revenues that they've earned all accrue under this one common pool of capital that's also owned by token holders. So if they want to, let's say, liquidate it tomorrow, they could liquidate it if the founder was someone like SBF. And they seem to be spending their capital on Bahamas, on some random things that's not supposed to be, that does not add value to tokens, right? And yeah, that's the protection MetaDAO offers. It's an alternative to the equity plus token structure, and it's an alternative to tokens as a meme alone tied to protocols where the founder is not obligated to provide any benefits to token holders.
Wow. And how is this so do you know why this ownership coin is not an equity? Then like how does this solve that debate?
Yeah. So I mean, this is not legal advice, right? Because we also are an ownership coin. So none of that. But the way I look at it is it's entirely owned by the markets and it's entirely owned by the people that are in the markets. So we are stewards of the protocol. So Crew, for example, the Umbra team, we are participants, we are contributors, just like you would, let's imagine if Hyperliquid, and if you heard of like the founder and the team's talk, like you'll hear them say stuff like, oh, we are contributors and stewards. We are running the Hyperliquid ecosystem, and there are other contributors as well, other teams building on the ecosystem. The same as any other chain, for example. That's the ethos of it, and that's the way I look at it. That is, if we tomorrow are not great stewards of the protocol or the network or the product, we could be fired. There could be some other team that's appointed by the board, and the board is the markets and the token holders, to lead the charge for this product, to do a better job. And because everything is controlled by the DAO and the markets, the treasury, the revenues, everything, it's not ours to claim. We do nothing except for get paid for services to build a product and get incentivized by the token for performance. That is, do we do a good job at exploring other markets? Do we grow? All of that stuff.
That makes sense. And I've also been seeing this. I just want to get definitions out of the way so that everyone knows what we're talking about, at the latter half of this podcast. Like I've been seeing this term stamp model being thrown around. Is this also like, how does this relate to this entire process?
Yes. So stamp, okay, let me give you like some context on why stamp originated. Stamp came from, okay, so MetaDAO, essentially when I was first pitching MetaDAO early, let's say last year, the big issue most founders had was, hey, I do not want to launch a token right now. Like I'd love to do MetaDAO. I'd love to figure out this value accrual model and be aligned with the community, do the right thing. But I do not want to launch a token right now because I'm pre-PMF. I'm a lot of things I haven't had any traction. My product's not live yet. Just all of that stuff, right? And it makes sense why a founder would be hesitant to launch a token. So the tokens are extremely stigmatized. That's one. And the founder wants to pick who the investors are on the cap table. Now, let's say if I were to tell you you're launching a product, just go raise directly from the markets. You have no control over who's on a cap table, who's going to influence your ideas, who's going to contribute to you, etc. It's going to be a bit harder for you to accept that. And that problem is solved by Stamp. So it took a while to get to this point for maybe Colosseum, which is the author, to come together with MetaDAO to figure this agreement out that can be used by pre-MetaDAO teams. So let's say if you hope to do a token launch and you don't want to go around the equity and other regular tokens, SAFE and SAFT route, you can use Stamp to assign X portion of your token allocation to investors that you pre-approved on a pro rata basis. So I think the 20% is the limit on Stamp. And that means, let's say, if you're going to ICO at 10 million FDV, You can assign 2 million of it to potential investors pre the round. So you can stay private for a bit longer, and you're not forced to go to MetaDAO or to have a token if you're not ready for it yet. So you can just raise capital, keep building, earn some PMF, and when you're finally ready for a token, you can go to MetaDAO and be like, "Hey, can you put us
So
on?"
it's just like a pre-sale, but for MetaDAO. It's like a
Yeah,
SAF.
yeah, it's like a SAP for MetaDAO, right? Like, and as part of the acronym, it does include market protected. That's the point of it. That is, this is the governance that's gonna be a part of this agreement, and it's gonna enforce this agreement is MetaDAO driven.
Wow. How was your experience scouting for MetaDAO?
Um, so I'd say when I first started, I mean, there was a little context on how to do this, right? Because I spent a lot of time scouting and finding teams and talent uh, for ecosystems. So I did it for a few chains. I did it for Super Team. Like week one, when I first started with Super Team, I was a member, became a bounty sheriff. I did that for a bit, and then I started finding teams to join us on the grant side, or maybe at least participate on bounties, and then something from there converts to becoming members and all of that stuff. And for MetaDAO, it's a bit different because I'm not just looking for someone who's a hacky dev, not a hackathon dev. I'm looking for someone that's a bit more matured and wants to build a business. So what we did was I decided to go first to every region I thought had the highest density of talent that was capital starved, and that was Profit's vision as well. That is, we want to address capital starved regions because that's where they would possibly benefit most from a permissionless market versus going to SF and trying to get a founder from there who already has plenty of VCs to back them. So we went to Istanbul, Dubai, and by Dubai because most emerging market founders do end up in Dubai. A few other Asian countries. I think Profit went to Tokyo. We were in Vietnam. Yeah, a bunch of other places, right? India as well. And in that process, we discovered the highest density of talent naturally ended up being in India just because of the, I'd say, the size of us. There's plenty of us over here. So you've met a bunch of good founders. It was great. The onboarding was extremely difficult and slow because the education process was non-existent. So I had to write extensive documents. Profit had to do videos, conversations to explain why this might be the better route for them. And so anyone that picked us in the beginning probably benefited immensely because they were outliers. They were edge cases. They were, exceptions. So Avicii was one of them. I think I made Avicii as an intro to Ram's intro to Profit, probably month one or month two of joining MetaDAO. And Crew was an ongoing process. I've known Crew for a long time, but in Feb is when I started advising Crew separately, independently, just because I like Crew and what he's building. And MetaDAO just came about naturally as we were going through hackathons together, all of that stuff. I was like, hey, you should definitely speak. And if you speak to Profit, I'm for sure Profit's going to like you. And that's what happened. But it was great. I think we met plenty of good founders. We just couldn't accommodate everyone.
Yeah, we're gonna get Crew on the pod later. I know you guys are cooking a lot on the Umbra side. And we'll keep that for a separate episode. Okay, one thing that I did want to ask you: do you have any insight on why Profit ended up doxing himself at Solana Breakpoint? Like, was that an conversation
Yeah.
within?
Yeah, I was a bit, I was like, oh shit, there should have been a bit more jazz to this, something extra. But Profit is pretty low key in that
Like,
sense.
I wanted like a marshmallow type reveal. Like
Yeah,
it should
yeah.
be like.
I wanted it to be like, hey, you know what? Yeah, it's like a big deal. Like I need like a 10-second emphasis on that part. But Profit didn't want to do that. But from what I heard, I think I spoke to him just before going on stage. I had no clue he was going to do that. I heard it on stage itself. And post that, I think it's primarily because of trust. It's extremely hard for someone to be like, hey, you're a founder that's part of the MetaDAO ecosystem, and you should probably lead with transparency first if the founder itself is not doxed. And now it's probably much easier because now he can go publicly speak about MetaDAO with his face out there and attract more people. So trust, I think, is the big deal here. It worked fine. Like I don't think it was a big deal for most founders within crypto, maybe outside of crypto. Now that we start looking at other teams or MetaDAO starts looking at other teams, it's going to be interesting.
I think you mentioned trust, right? And I think another thing people need to know about MetaDAO is regarding the founder incentives are super aligned. I think most people don't know that. Like they get a certain kind of incentive when the market cap or whatever, I mean, you don't have to talk about it, but just talk about like those kinds of decisions. Is that what kind of set apart MetaDAO and kind of has given this and helped kind of galvanize this early community trust and support?
Yeah, absolutely. Every choice that's made is made. I mean, of course, we care about MetaDAO cares about like founder friendliness, right? So a lot of decisions now, for example, with the recent proposal that was passed for allowing team proposals to be passed relatively easily compared to a community proposal, are all founder friendly decisions to make. But prior to that, it was also figuring out what was the biggest pain point for an investor and fixing those pain points. Because if you fix the value accrual mechanism to the token and the incentive mechanism for a token, you now naturally have better tokens, and better tokens lead to better funding, whether it's private or public or liquid funding, and better institutions participation on these tokens, better founders participation, all of that stuff, and attracts quality talent. And once that is fixed, everything else fixes itself. So yes, decisions like those were extremely vital and crucial. It's the only way you could get someone to participate and trust a random new launchpad, and go ahead and play around and contribute as a core contributor to some of the teams as well.
And I would assume like initially the selection process was a little bit more, like you'd want to work with a lot more teams. Has the selection process changed from like last February to now? Like, has it become a lot more stricter? What are like common questions that a founder should have the answers to before talking to the MetaDAO team?
Yeah. So I no longer actively work with MetaDAO. I stopped working somewhere around August, if I remember correctly. And but from what I understand from the groups that I'm in and from forums I'm in, and I can access information, and I've spoken to the team here and there, is that they have an extensive pipeline of like 200, 300 participants, probably more now. This is last month's information. And they are not going the permissionless route yet. So it's not going to be a flurry of new teams joining left, right, center. It's going to be extremely slow and deliberate. And so for you to be able to get their attention is extremely hard, maybe because they already have a pipeline fixed. So the only way to do that is to express, I mean, reach out to Profit first of all. I'm sure they'll respond, Profit, Colin, and give them enough context about what your product is and what your traction is and what you need the funds for, and probably a bit about your vision, right? I think that should help you get some attention on, hey, this might be a good bet to make right now. So I think the goal is for them to get the highest quality founders and highest quality assets on the platform for the next whatever period of time. And once that's done, it makes it relatively easier for people to trust the platform.
Do you have like
Yeah.
any like special advice for these founders? Like I know this is like stuff that they would probably be ready with. Like let me sort of pick your brains on some of the good projects that have launched on Reddit. Like think of Umbra, Vici, all these sort of projects that have done well. Like, is there a secret sauce from these teams that you've seen like the team appreciates? Is there like any special advice for me with these things?
It's hard for me to say what Profit's gut was on these founders, but every message I've gotten from Profit after talking to these founders immediately was, "This is the best founder I've spoken to." Like, there's something about knowing a founder's vision that is a sharper gauge than anything else, right? So, for example, Ram is someone that has extremely principle based morals. That he's like, hey, you know what? I want the longest cliff. I want the longest vesting. I want to have incentives aligned for the longest time. I don't want to pump and get out right now. So, for example, he has no token allocations right now, but they'll introduce some token allocations. They're going to do it in a way that says for at least the next 3 years, they get nothing, irrespective of what price the token hits. And post that, they'll have this linear plus something schedule for unlocks and whatever. That aligns him with the token holders much more than any other form or mechanism that's been out there. And that kind of probably pitch or that kind of ideal or principle probably helps your case. I have no clue or no way of saying for sure, because it's the team's gut instinct mostly.
Yeah, you're on time, and I want to ask something that is more recent and more relevant right now. You're seeing a lot of these ICOs come out, and they're doing these sales. Many of them are overhyped and whatnot. How should someone understand these sales? Like, for example, when they say that this is oversubscribed 10 times or oversubscribed, 20 times, 100 times, whatever it is, how should someone kind of assess these ICO sales? Uh, Even though they are promoting this very novel thing, ownership coins and whatnot. But how should someone from high level look at, even you invest in these coins, right? How do you look at it, and what would you say someone, let's say retail, who's not been in the markets or for a while, and they're looking to invest or park their money in something that's more uh, on fairer than all these VC stuff we had over the years?
Yes, I mean, there's a bunch of things that makes MetaDAO fairer, right? I think we didn't discuss a lot of those stuff, but you can look it up on MetaDAO's site and some of the token launches they've done. The FDV naturally is much lower on these tokens, so that's an incentive for anyone to participate. You're not going on to a random platform where the FDV is going to be 20 million, 30 million, 40, 50, 60 million, etc. It's not bloated. It's tied to the NAV or the treasury value or the fundraising capital. That's a part of the platform. That's part of the raise. So when I look at it, I now probably am a less of an active participant in new launches and raises, but I actually did participate in the first 5 or 6. And it is the best way to look at it. Maybe it depends on who you are. If you're an investor, you probably want to assume that there's going to be the highest amount of capital committed for any raise, because you're trying to acquire a small portion of the funds raised or the token allocation, and that's not exactly the most appealing way to do it, but it's the only way to disincentivize snipers and a bunch of other problems. So it's hard to get a significant position in the ICO unless you're a whale, but you can at least get a bare minimum position considering this market demand. I would just recommend, if you really like a token, I don't think you should worry about not getting into the ICO. Just wait for it on the markets and they can buy it. Because if you see Ranger right now, Ranger's gone off on the market. It's down below its NAV, so you're getting probably a cheaper discounted price. Not a recommendation, but you can obviously, if you were interested in the market in the ICO, you'd be like, hey, this is a much cheaper deal. I should probably go get it. So I wouldn't say rush into ICOs right now.
That makes sense. Abbas, sort of a abstract question. Do you think we'll see teams who've already done token launches try to shift into this ownership model? Like,
Yeah.
is that something that the team has ever thought about? Like, if an existing coin wanted to change into an ownership coin, what would that process be like?
Yeah, this was not a thing before, by the way. Right before, the strict criteria was, hey, if you have raised private capital, we can't help you. If you've done a token launch before, we can't help you. But some of that has changed right now. If you raise private capital, you can shift to a stamp. I think even if you've done a safe and a SAFT, you can shift to a stamp and talk to investors. And if you already have a token, I think I've seen a few other teams do it, like Drift, in active conversations. I think I've seen some posts from them, nothing else, where they've said they want to explore ownership tokens. So what they ideally do is just move their treasury to a DAO, sign off some agreements, move some legal entities here and there, and then get started. And they would essentially be called an ownership coin, but they would not have raised to the platform. They'd have all the same constituents or the ingredients to be an ownership coin. Flash Trade is another one. They are going to be an ownership coin pretty soon. They were already using Futaki extensively, but they were not legally assigned and all of that details that MetaDAO calls an ownership structure. So I definitely think more of that is going to happen this year. I think I might even be willing to believe there'd be more of those, and that'd be ICOs, because it's much easier, or relatively easier, right? An ICO requires a new good team to come on board, which you can scale. But imagine the amount of capital that gets saved from moving existing teams that would have otherwise died and had no accountability. But now being ownership coins, they might survive.
Ownership coins
Andre,
are the new tax. Yeah,
okay,
KG.
one
Second of
final
this.
thing. What is your
Um,
prediction for the aggregate of all ownership coin projects? What do you think the market cap will be for all the projects for the entire year by the end of this year?
I have no idea, man. I don't think I've spent enough time even thinking about that concept. But I'd be willing to make a bet on the conservative side. Uh, I don't know how many launches might happen. That's my problem, right? Like, I don't know if MetaDAO is going to do like 100 more launches. So there's no way to say. But I would assume 80% of the value comes from the first 5 teams. And I'm big a bit, you know, whatever about it. I think because Avicii, for example, Ranger, Solo, it's all really high quality teams. I'm going to make an assessment base of that. I'd say probably like $1 billion. It's extremely um, ambitious, but yeah, why would I go conservative?
So you would say it's still early.
Extremely early. Imagine they launch 100 more teams. There's no way to say what's going to happen next.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Abbas. We'll talk about more projects. Maybe we
So,
should
Gage,
do
can I
like
just ask one last question? I think we missed the big one. Us, on the hot seat, do you think this model is better than the buyback model that we've been seeing on the timeline so
Oh,
much?
absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Crush the buyback model. You don't need buybacks on this, right? Like when you own something, why do you need buybacks on it? It makes no sense. The buyback thing was introduced so that you can tie a link between the founder and the company's incentives to that of token holders, because equity was the one accruing most value. And now you don't need this. Now the team can actually focus on building. Like we don't get a buyback question anymore. Umbra does not, because Umbra just focused on executing the product and the vision there, and the markets will handle themselves. It's fixed.
Yeah. KG kind of fucked my joke with his question, but I think ownership coins are the new DATs. That's probably the title of this one.
I
Uh,
don't think we want to be DAS, man. Not yet. DAS don't look so good right now.
but yeah, thanks so much, Abbas. Abbas, we're definitely gonna have you on when Umbra's close to something bigger. We'll have you and crew on. But this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all
thank
this.
you, sir.
I really want to, I want to still see you on the timeline as just going after all these sort of posts. I think it's been the most entertaining part for me last week. Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I'll
Thank
see you.
you.